She was not born great, nor Russian. Born in 1729 as Sophie Friederike Augusta von Anhalt-Zerbst, a minor German princess, few would have expected her to one day become one of the most powerful women in history. But Catherine the Great was no ordinary royal consort. From the moment she set foot on Russian soil at just 14, she began a lifelong campaign, not only for power, but for transformation. Catherine would not just wear a crown, she would reshape an empire. Her journey began with marriage, though not one of love. She was chosen to marry the heir to the Russian throne, Peter III, a distant cousin of the Empress Elizabeth. Peter was awkward, immature, obsessed with toy soldiers, and enamored with Prussian culture, traits that would later make him wildly unpopular with the Russian people. The marriage was a disaster from the beginning. Catherine was intelligent, curious, and politically ambitious. Peter was petulant and erratic. Over time, their mutual disdain grew, and Catherine began cultivating alliances at court, quietly building a network of supporters who admired her poise, intellect, and strength of character. Catherine knew early on that her survival, and possibly her greatness, would depend on removing her husband from power. When Empress Elizabeth died in 1762, Peter ascended the throne. His rule lasted just 6 months. Peter alienated the military, insulted the Orthodox Church, and showed a disturbing admiration for Russia's enemy, Frederick the Great of Prussia. Catherine seized her moment. With the backing of the Imperial Guard and her lover, the powerful and popular Grigory Orlov, she orchestrated a bloodless coup. Peter was forced to abdicate. A few days later, he was found dead under mysterious circumstances. Catherine, now the sole ruler, wasted no time consolidating her power. She crowned herself Empress Catherine II of Russia. Her reign, which would last 34 years, was defined by contradiction and brilliance. She was a monarch who championed Enlightenment ideals, yet ruled an autocracy. She spoke of freeing the serfs, yet ultimately reinforced their bondage. She embraced Western philosophy, read Montesquieu and Voltaire, and corresponded with the great minds of her age. Yet she maintained an iron grip on power, quashing rebellion and dissent with ruthless efficiency. Catherine believed deeply in the power of education and progress. She established Russia's first state-funded school for girls and overhauled the country's legal code, which had remained largely untouched since the days of Ivan the Terrible. She commissioned vast cultural projects, libraries, theaters, museums, and invited architects, artists, and scholars from across Europe to transform St. Petersburg into a city worthy of an empire. Under her rule, Russia became not just a military force, but a cultural power. But if her public life was about empire building, her private life was something altogether more controversial. Catherine's love life has become the stuff of legend. Some of it true, much of it exaggerated, and some of it outright fabricated. After the failure of her marriage, Catherine took a series of lovers, many of them younger, handsome military officers or well-bred noblemen. But these were not casual affairs. Catherine often relied on her lovers not only for companionship, but for political counsel and loyalty. She rewarded them with titles, estates, and influence, effectively turning her romantic relationships into strategic alliances. Among her most notable lovers were Grigory Orlov, who helped her overthrow Peter III, Grigory Potemkin, a brilliant statesman and general who may have been her true soulmate, and a string of carefully selected young men known as her favorites. Far from being scandalous by Russian court standards, these relationships became an accepted, if whispered about, feature of her rule. Yet Catherine's enemies, both foreign and domestic, used her private life as a weapon. Pamphlets and caricatures circulated across Europe depicting her as a nymphomaniac, an empress ruled by lust rather than reason. The most infamous and utterly false rumor of all was the tale of Catherine's death, that she had died while attempting to have intercourse with a horse. This grotesque lie, likely spread by her enemies in France or Britain, was meant to reduce her life's accomplishments to a punchline. In truth, Catherine died of a stroke in 1796 at the age of 67. But the persistence of the horse rumor illustrates just how threatening powerful women have always been to male-dominated history. And powerful she was. Under Catherine, Russia expanded its territory more than under any ruler since Peter the Great. She annexed Crimea, gained control of parts of Poland and Lithuania, and extended Russia's reach deep into the Black Sea and Caucasus regions. The empire that she inherited as an awkward outsider became a colossus by the time she left it behind. Yet Catherine's reign was not without failures. While she flirted with the idea of liberating Russia's millions of serfs, she ultimately backed away from reform after the Pugachev Rebellion, a violent peasant uprising in 1773 led by a Cossack who claimed to be her deposed husband, Peter III. The rebellion shocked Catherine. It revealed the deep resentment and desperation boiling beneath the surface of her empire. In response, she cracked down harder on dissent and reinforced the privileges of the nobility. The dream of a liberal, enlightened monarchy faded into the reality of autocratic rule. Still, Catherine never gave up her intellectual pursuits. She wrote plays, memoirs, and political treatises. She designed schools and dreamed of a Russian utopia. She even attempted to draft a constitution inspired by Enlightenment thinkers, though it was never enacted. Her court became a magnet for philosophers, artists, and scientists. She corresponded with Voltaire, Diderot, and D'Alembert, discussing everything from liberty and justice to art and science. Voltaire once called her the Semiramis of the North, a reference to the legendary Assyrian queen who ruled with power and grace. By the time of her death, Catherine had ruled longer than any other female Russian leader, and had done so entirely in her own right. Her legacy is complex. She was a modernizer, but also an autocrat, a champion of culture and intellect, yet ruthless when her power was threatened. A woman who used romance as a tool of statecraft, yet suffered the sting of being remembered more for scandal than for empire. Today, historians are increasingly re-evaluating Catherine, not just as a ruler of immense political and cultural influence, but as a woman who defied the roles her era tried to assign her. She was not content to be a royal consort. She did not fade quietly into the shadow of her husband. She built her own legacy, with charm, with brilliance, and yes, with calculated ambition. Catherine the Great was a force, neither wholly benevolent nor entirely ruthless. She was a mirror of her times and a maker of them. In an age when women were expected to marry well and keep silent, she ruled one of the largest empires in the world. Her life may have been peppered with scandal, but it was defined by vision, courage, and power. In the end, Catherine didn't just inherit a throne, she transformed it. She didn't just reign over an empire, she reinvented it. Her story remains one of the most captivating in all of history, not because she was perfect, but because she dared to be great.